When Nirmala Sitharaman presented the budget on Feb 1st, all the common man wanted to know was whether
personal taxes are reduced.
But seasoned economists look for another number.
Keeping the fiscal deficit at 3.8% of GDP.
In plain English, fiscal deficit is how much extra money the government spends over what it actually has. By end 2020, already 9.3 lakh crore of extra rupees was spent. 132% of the full year's deficit target, and still 3 more months to go. You and me have also done this at some point in our lives by borrowing money we don't have.
We will need to take a loan to buy this house.
Spending, if done prudently, is a wealth creation exercise. Like money to buy a house, build roads, bridges, power lines, etc. that helps existing or new business activity. Even what some might consider a waste, like building Sardar Patel's statue, see Bisbo's video, will over the years actually bring in tourism and jobs. As with the bullet train, both of which projects Bisbo has ardently supported through its videos. But just like wasteful expenditures in personal lives can mean financial ruin,
Munimji, my daughter is getting married. I need to borrow money. Here are my land documents as security.
successive governments have also spent wastefully. High salaries to government servants despite mostly poor performances, running loss-making businesses like Air India, loan waivers to farmers every few years. Basic freebies to the poor like water, electricity, education, midday meals, subsidized local transport, Wi-Fi services are necessary, but with a cap, not endlessly. If a common man doesn't pay their EMI, they may lose their houses. But the government can keep on borrowing or printing additional notes to cover their excesses. The Financial Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003 requires the central government to reduce its fiscal deficit to 3% of GDP, currently at $3.2 trillion. India's deficit has almost always been higher. A deficit of 3% of GDP in the modern world is considered a hallmark of financial prudence, giving investors confidence that the economy is being run well. So to keep the figure as close to 3% as possible, all governments resort to jugaad or improvisations. One jugaad is not to pay for expenses due in the current year, leaving it outstanding for the next budget.
Madam, our payment is due.
Come next year.
In the following year, the jugaad the government did was to tell Coal India and NTPC to pay advance rail freight for the next year, thereby showing more income. 2 years back, Government of India's jugaad was to ask ONGC to buy HPCL by borrowing funds from the market. Since HPCL is a government company, the sale amount money came to them, which they showed as an earning, leaving ONGC with the problem of repayment. When the economy grows, GDP increases and the deficit percentage automatically falls, without the government having to cut spending. For example, a $100 billion deficit in a 3 trillion economy is 3.3%, while in a 4 trillion economy, it would be 2.5%. Unfortunately, in the last few years, India's economy has not grown fast enough. The forecasted 18% expected growth in tax collections was actually a mere 0.8% for the first 8 months. Switching from a cash-based system to an accrual-based system of accounting will force the government to stop this practice. For example, if salaries for January are paid in March, then under cash basis, it will appear in the books in March, while in the accrual system, it would be shown immediately in end January itself. Yet another jugaad is to ask public sector companies to borrow money and then hand it over to them. In this way, Food Corporation of India has given the government 1,56,000 crore, $22 billion, an amount that does not show up in the fiscal deficit figures. In 2017-18, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India blew the lid on this jugaad.
The formal fiscal deficit was 3.46%, but taking into account the various manipulations, the true deficit is really 5.5%.
The Economic Affairs Secretary of the Modi government till July 2019 also echoes the same number,
between 4 to 5.5%.
In a welcome gesture of transparency this year, the Finance Minister revealed that off-book borrowings was 0.7% of GDP, thereby admitting the truer extent of the deficit. To cover expenses, the government does another jugaad by selling part of its family jewels, profit-making public sector units every year. Of this year's budgeted target of 1,05,000 crore from 23 PSUs, only 18,100 crore has been achieved. So they will resort to the lender of the last resort, RBI, reportedly for another interim dividend after already having taken 1,70,000 crore or $24 billion in late August as it struggles to meet its expenditure commitments. These very policies resulted in the exit of Raghuram Rajan and Urjit Patel as governors of India's Reserve Bank. See Bisbo's video on both of them. Borrowing money on interest from abroad via sovereign bonds is yet another jugaad. If the government is open about the actual extent of its fiscal deficit, it may result in a one-time setback, but investors will appreciate the transparency and gain confidence in the India story. Bisbo's limerick. The ideal fiscal deficit to GDP should not be more than 3%. If it exceeds that number, then you have too much money spent. So to reach that sacred figure, you kind of reconfigure and hide the other borrowings and the law you circumvent. Subscribe to Bisbo and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever Bisbo releases a new video. Sources of all our information is listed in the video description section.